It's a time for truth, a time to rise to the challenge, just as Americans have always done. I believe in America and her people, and I believe we can stand up and restore our promise. It's going to take a new generation of courageous conservatives to help make America great again. And I'm ready to stand with you to lead the fight.
In the leadoff slot, senior contributor to the Daily Caller and a contributing editor for the week, Matt Lewis. And from the University of Virginia Center for Politics, an associate editor of Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball, where more often than not, they get political predictions dead on. Geoffrey Skelley joins us. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Matt, I'm going to go ahead and put my foot right in the fire to start things out. Those who say that what a wonderful job Ted Cruz does. He speaks marvelously. He energizes an audience, but he has absolutely no chance of becoming president of the United States. Your take?
Well, look, I think, there was a guy that ran a few years ago named Barack Obama who'd been in the Senate for about 15 minutes before he decided to run for president. And the lack of experience, the lack of executive experience didn't hurt him one bit. He was able to sort of sell people on a hope and change idea that was really aided by the fact that he was fresh and didn't have a big record or a long resume in elected office. And I think Cruz is trying to take a page from the same playbook with the imagine message that he talked about. I think I counted 38 times he said the word imagine today.
All right, Geoffrey, I get it to you now. Can you imagine Ted Cruz as actually being able to be electable?
I think it's going to be difficult for him to win the Republican nomination, mainly because the establishment is so dead set against him. And regardless of how the grassroots may feel for Ted Cruz, and they're going to be a big reason why he has any chance, the establishment has generally gotten what it's wanted. He's going to have to change things up a bit, given recent history.
But don't we keep hearing that people don't want the same old anymore? They don't want those career politicians. That's what we're told. And I mean, granted, he is a career politician, but they keep talking about change. Is Ted Cruz change?
I think he's going to portray himself that way. Though honestly, some of the things he went back to, he referenced in his speech Patrick Henry. He referenced the shining city on the hill, I think, which was Ronald Reagan used often.
I think that's probably a good way to put it to it. We're having a little problem with your Skype, so let me get to Geoffrey with this while we clear that up right now. Jeff, it's one thing that I did see here, and you saw it. And Matt, let me come to you now on this. It seemed like this was a speech that was just full of all the wonder, all the invectives. And I think maybe Jeff has something there. It looked like it could have come right out of the Ronald Reagan playbook.
Well, I think so. And in a sense, Ronald Reagan in terms of optimism, right? I mean, Ted Cruz up until now has been very good at talking about indignation, getting conservatives mad about things, mad about Obama's executive overreach, mad about Obamacare. But today, we saw a much more optimistic Ted Cruz. He started off by talking about his family story, a story of the American dream. It sounded a lot like Marco Rubio's story. And then even when he got to the sort of negative stuff, he was using words like imagine over and over and over again. And that is Reagan-esque. So I think there's really no doubt about it that Ted Cruz is a really good orator, and I think he has made a conscious decision to move away from being solely negative. He still threw lots of red meat. There was plenty there for everybody to like if you're a conservative, but he got away from being solely sort of hard right red meat and also brought in that Reaganistic that sort of Reagan-esque optimism, if you will.
I think that pretty much says it well as far as the Reagan side is concerned. I think he hit all the points here. Jeff, but when we look at what Ted Cruz wants, I got a minute left here before we take a break. What does he want? Does he really want to get out there and be somebody who influences the platform? There's got to be an end game here because, again, people are not going to want me to say it. I'm going to get hammered for it. But even as you pointed out, a lot of the establishment says he has no chance to be president, so there's got to be an end game here.
Perhaps, but at the end of the day, Cruz really does believe he can be president. He's overcome a lot of obstacles to get to where he is now. If you recall, in 2012, when he ended up becoming a Republican senator from Texas, he had to beat very much an establishment candidate and then Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst, and no one really gave him much of a shot of winning that primary. He went on to win it in a runoff, and so I think he really does believe he can win, even with the odds against him.
Jeff, 15 seconds before we take a break here, and then we come out and talk about a few more things. You've answered this question, so now let me get it to Matt. Matt, seriously, do you think he really believes he can be president?
Yeah, I think he believes he can be president. It's always, you get in the race, something good has to happen. Maybe he wins, maybe he doesn't. Either way, I think he believes he comes out ahead. He can make a national name for himself. Sometimes you can win without actually winning, and I think that's what might happen here.
All right, let the games begin. Gentlemen, please hold on just a moment. We're going to take a break. Ted Cruz hopes his candidacy blows out the candles on the 5th birthday of Obamacare. And who might be next to toss his or her out into the proverbial ring? Back to work. Senior contributor to the Daily Caller and a contributing editor for The Week, Matt Lewis. And from the University of Virginia Center for Politics and associate editor of Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball, Geoffrey Skelley. All right, gentlemen, let's get back to it here. Jeff, I'm going to start with you this time. Let's look at some other possibilities here. Rand Paul wants Hillary Clinton to return Saudi donations. He wants Americans to boycott Saudi Arabia. And now he's all set to go in April. What do you think that his message will be that could blunt what Ted Cruz did today?
I think he's going to very much make appeals that kind of strike a libertarian chord. For Paul, his problem is that he and Cruz have at least a little bit of crossover in terms of their support from the Tea Party, or what is generally denoted as the Tea Party. And for Paul, the fact that Cruz got in the race first, it's apparent, though, that Cruz is very much taking on a very religious-centered message. I mean, he opened today with Liberty University, the world's largest Christian university, and his entire speech reflected that. So I think for Paul, it's going to be trying to gin up support from perhaps the less religious parts of it while not losing out on them too. I think that's probably the angle he may have to take if he wants to make any headway.
Matt, when you look at what goes on here, and in fact, Geoffrey's right. I mean, this was done at Liberty University. This is absolutely an appeal to the far right of the Conservative Party at this point. But isn't it true that if you go that far out one way or another, you simply become a very difficult candidate? You can't. Look, let me be honest. Some people say you can't win if you go that far right, and that's why a guy like Rand Paul has a better chance because he brings it in closer to center.
Yeah, that's a theory. I guess first, you know, unlike Jeb Bush, who said sometimes you have to lose the primary to win the general, I think Ted Cruz realizes you have to win the primary to have a shot at the general. And in a place like Iowa, for example, wherever they have the first contest, the caucuses, you know, the evangelical vote would be huge. So if Ted Cruz can get the Christian conservative coalition bloc to sort of coalesce around him, and by the way, he has to compete not just with Rand Paul, but with Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum and Ben Carson. It's going to be a crowded field. But if Cruz could get them to coalesce around him, he could, you know, slide in there and win Iowa and then maybe be off to the races. And look, I think there's an argument that it's easier for a hardcore conservative to win a general election because they don't have to pander to the base the way that Mitt Romney did. You know, they don't have to go around saying, I'm severely conservative. Everybody would know that Ted Cruz is conservative.
I don't think anybody's ever going to have one question whatsoever about Ted Cruz's conservatism. Yeah. I don't think that's even going to be in question one shot here. But let me ask you this, Matt. On the other side of things, the Boston Globe runs an editorial on Sunday urging, if not pleading, with Elizabeth Warren to run for the Democratic nomination. Are they just blowing smoke at this point? Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to money and power.
I'm really surprised that she's not running, to be honest with you. I think Hillary is more vulnerable than anybody would have thought. And
why? Why, though? I mean, doesn't she have all the money and all the power behind her?
Yeah, but you know what? Look what happened to her in 2008. I think candidates have a moment that, you know, Ted Cruz is seizing his moment. Barack Obama could have said, let's serve more time in the Senate, but he seized his moment. I think Elizabeth Warren is letting her moment pass her by.
All right, Jeff, I'll throw it to you then. Is this Elizabeth Warren's moment?
Well, I think it would be a difficult battle for her.
You're not too sure, are you, Jeff? I can tell. You're not quite as sold, are you?
Not quite as sold on it. But I do think that if she were ever going to run, then, you know, maybe this would have been the time. But I think it's just a path to victory for her. Sure, she would have a lot of support from progressives, but I think Warren also isn't necessarily interested in dividing the party to the extent that she would if she did run. And that's the one thing that Hillary Clinton has going for her that no Republican has, and is one of the main reasons why no one really wants to get in against her except some more minor candidates, comparatively speaking, is that she really is a unifying force. Democrats in all kinds of polls have generally shown that they are in favor of voting for Hillary Clinton in primaries and she's the nominee. In fact, there was a poll that showed that those who said that they were likely to show up in a primary to vote were more likely than kind of just your average Democrat.
I don't know. We're still talking about an awful lot of money and an awful lot of power here, Jeff. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Hillary's got that in her hands right there, right now.
Oh, absolutely. The establishment's behind her. Most of the party base, it would be relatively unified by her candidacy. So, yeah, there are a lot of reasons to think that she would be extremely difficult to beat and tougher to beat than in 2008 when, yes, she ended up having a lot of vulnerabilities that Obama was able to take advantage of.
We're all out of time, gentlemen, unfortunately, but I think we can all agree on one thing here. He or she who has the money in their hands is going to be the one who will run things come the time we speak to the Democratic and the Republican conventions. Now let's see who gets the money on the right. Geoffrey, Skelley, Matt Lewis, always a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. There are parts of the world where Christianity is the religious minority. And those are the Christians that are currently being targeted for extermination. The world is not paying attention. Maybe now they will, as a national network brings national and even global attention to the issue. That and more when MidPoint continues.